Hi, welcome to our session. Thank you for joining Charles and me today as we discuss diversity and inclusion in the workplace. We're really excited to speak with you today, and our goal is to share some general best practices as well as some firsthand experiences when it comes to creating a more diverse and inclusive workplace. First, for introductions, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself and then turn it over to Charles. My name is Keli Wilson, and I'm a principal consultant and senior manager of EEO compliance and diversity at DCI Consulting Group. I have over 15 years of experience and lead the diversity practice group here at DCI. All staff are industrial organizational psychologists, and we focus on HR risk management. My approach or my contribution to today's discussion is more the general best practices around embracing diversity and inclusion in your organization. Our main practices or our focus here at DCI is really helping companies to embrace diversity metrics and letting the data tell the story of where potential barriers lie and how to overcome those in the workplace to allow for a more inclusive workplace through policies, practices, and other procedures that you embrace. Specifically, some of the areas that we focus on when it comes to diversity metrics in organizations is focusing on pay equity, performance evaluation tools, evaluating policies and practices, as well as looking at the entire diversity of your company practices. So looking at your company profile, looking for potential opportunities for more diversity in your pipeline, as well as your selection practices, promotion practices, and retention. I'll go ahead and give a couple examples of what that might look like in your organization later on our presentation. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and let Charles introduce himself and give a brief overview of Wisdom Senior Care. Charles?
Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon. How are you today? My name is Charles Thurston. I am the COO of Wisdom Senior Care franchise. We're based out of North Carolina. We have been franchising for 4 years. We've been doing senior in-home care for 14 years. We have 6 units, and we're just so appreciative of the IFA, Google, Location 3 to talk and share about diversity and inclusion.
Great, thanks, Charles. I know this topic is such a hot topic for companies right now, and it's a big priority for companies going into 2021. And I think some of those reasons is just because of the pure benefits around embracing diversity and inclusion in companies. We know from empirical research that there's many benefits to embracing diversity and inclusion, such as lower turnover, more creativity and innovation, improved problem solving, as well as higher quality solutions and decision-making processes, enhanced performance by employees, as well as an improved corporate image and just overall a competitive advantage for companies. At this time, though, I'd really like to hear from you, Charles, and your firsthand experiences around how you embrace this at your organization, and specifically providing an overview of your success in bringing in franchisees from diverse backgrounds via your nursing school.
Okay, great, awesome. Well, Wisdom Senior Care, we for our franchisees is diverse. We have an Asian couple that is our franchisees. We have single African American females and single African American males that are our franchisees. And with our school, which is Wisdom Health Academy, we have had a plethora of ethnic backgrounds from every diverse background you can think of, from the age of 18 up to 60. And in turns, that also helped for the employment, for their career paths, because some had different directions where they wanted to further their education, and also business ownership.
Thanks, Charles. I think with that, is there any other successful stories of how you were able to attract that talent to be interested in becoming the franchisee and creating that diverse culture for them to want to come work with you?
Yes. With the franchisees, they wanted to first better their life, with their goals and dreams of business ownership. And then if you look at with, let's say, our clients and customers slash employees, because when we think about diversity, it's really a combination package. With our franchisees, they can be able to interact with all different types of clients because the clients is the heartbeat of our industry. And we have a diverse background of clients in the industry in itself, but also in terms that's a diverse background for our employees. And what makes it attractive is that they can interact, have great conversations with their experiences, different languages, so that way they both can grow. And in turn, the franchisees, or the bottom line is they're creating the income that they want, but also being able to create income for longevity for our employees.
No, that's fantastic to hear. Thanks. Thanks, Charles. I think the next question, and I think everyone listening will figure out that we're doing this more of a question and answer style. We really want to make it more of a conversation for you all to learn from both of us on different topics. And so the next topic that we'd like to cover is kind of twofold. If you're an organization or a business that hasn't been as successful, or maybe at the beginning stages of this D&I journey, where do you start would be the question. And I can go ahead and start that, but then we're going to lead into not just where do you start, but also how do you continue to create that diverse culture. I think from my perspective, as I said, I come from a very diverse, data-driven approach when it comes to letting it tell me the story. But it also starts beyond that. I think, when we get engaged with companies to look at their diversity metrics and tell a story with it, we first need to know that there's leadership involvement and buy-in. And I think that's the key to making this work within organizations. And we're seeing across the country a lot of leaders pledging commitment to D&I for many of the reasons why I already mentioned, but also it's a very good thing to do. It's the right thing to do. But one of the things that we are seeing is that they're pledging to set goals and to reach certain milestones within their organizations, which we applaud. However, one thing that we would want to look at if I was starting a journey with a company in this practice is to first assess what those goals could look like instead of setting potentially arbitrary goals. And one way we do that is by looking at company profiles. So what percent of females or males are within a particular job in your organization, and comparing that to some labor market statistic. So we know that nationally there's about 22% of females that are sitting in executive level jobs. And so if we look at an organization's executive level jobs and we see that there's only 5% of females, we can run some statistical analyses to say, is that gap large enough for us to be concerned about? And should we actually look better or look more like our labor market tells us that we could look like? And if it does say that we have substantially different figures than what our national market or our geographical area that we're looking at tells us that we could look like, that's where we would want to set a goal. And we would strive to potentially start to look like that labor market within the organization. As I mentioned, it does take top leadership to embrace this and to communicate it, throughout the organization. But another way, if you're starting this, is to hold accountable the change of behaviors and not necessarily the achievement of a particular figure. And so one thing that we've always encouraged is setting up reward systems or performance evaluation tools that evaluate the practice that has changed or the contribution that the leader had in starting to make a change within the organization. So an example of that would be creating a better pipeline by using better resources or avenues to attract diverse talent within your organization. And so we would applaud that as a way to get to the next step. So I think that is at the most simplistic level. If you were starting, I think just evaluating your diversity profile and measuring it up against what the labor force would tell you that you could have for the qualified talent that's sitting out there in the labor force, and doing some just general comparisons to see where you might have some gaps or in opportunities and where you're very successful. Because if you are very successful in some areas of your organization, you might want to tap into the managers or the talent acquisition team that's supporting some of the recruitment and other efforts into attracting and retaining that talent. And so I think, Charles, to you, I think, thinking back to where you guys started and where you are today, what's some advice or something that you can share with our audience about how to start their practice, as well as how to create that diverse culture to kind of retain it over time?
Sure. And Kelly, you're so right. And I embraced everything that you said. What's exciting to me, it really goes to a mindset. You have to have a mindset of transparency. You have to have a mindset of you want to change, especially with the culture and your mission of your values. Our values is faith, commitment, loyalty, integrity, and compassion. And so when we have different ethnic groups that come in through our organization, we let them know this is very transparent, but you have a roadmap that's right for everyone. It doesn't deviate if you're a male or female. It doesn't deviate, your gender or your color of your skin. It just says, okay, you want to grow, whether it's in senior care, in management, business development, and then it'll allow you, or administration, it'll allow you then to start growing within. And that's one thing that we have embraced with wisdom from day one to the present. And it's trickled down from the founder, which is Carolyn Thurston, to the newest employee that we have. But we also done this with our franchisees as well. And they do the same duplication effect with their employees. And keep in mind with the clients, when we have the clients and they see different diversity, then that gives them, number one, assurance of quality, gives them assurance of professionalism, and that goes over a period of time. And when they can embrace that and see the growth, then everyone wins and everyone's happy.
Great, thanks, Charles. I think one of the things that we wanted to cover also is, over time, how do you maintain that culture? How do you continuously, are you training? Is it just through pure policy and practice? But how do you keep up with the growth and scalability of your organization and kind of maintaining that inclusive culture?
Okay, great. Yes, we have in-service trainings periodically, normally about twice a month. Of course, we have the franchise training, and that's on a weekly basis. We've done quite a bit of Google videos. I mean, plug for Google. But all those tools, because we want to stay with the growing times. You have a generation that's younger, so of course they can do it on their mobile phones. They can be able to learn and see the culture, see the different mission statements to allow them to change and grow. Because they will come into situations where a client may say, well, I only want this particular employee, or I only want to work with this particular agency. And when you have situations like that, that's when you have to go back to the videos, have conversations with the leadership to say, what can we do to rectify this situation? So to answer that question, we do it on a weekly basis. We do in-house training, and we actually do modulars to help them grow as well.
Thank you, Charles. I think when it comes to the longevity, when I work with companies and we're looking at diversity metrics, we tend to see with the best practice employers that they are doing some type of analytics on an annual basis, and some are doing it at a monthly monitoring and or biannual monitoring to kind of evaluate like their progress part way or throughout the year. But we are seeing a lot of companies embracing metrics when it comes to looking at their pay equity practices between different race, ethnicity, and sex groups. We are seeing different performance or selection barrier analyses and other diversity metrics goals created at a 1 year or a 5 year plan. And I would say that, we love data, but also there is analysis paralysis. So know what your organization is comfortable committing to and evaluating and taking action on. Because if you start running too many analyses and you can't keep up with it, it could be more harmful than doing the right amount of analyses and taking action on the results. I think, with that in mind. Charles, do you have any other tips or tricks that you would want to share around just your success and or any milestones that you had to overcome or hardships that you guys had to overcome that you were successful in doing so?
I'm sure. When we first started, Kelly, here's what's funny or unique. Now, of course, you can tell I'm African American. And Carolyn wouldn't share that at the beginning with our client base. Of course, when we had employees come in, that was fine. But over a test of time, we built a type of relationship professionally with the state of North Carolina and in the local area, the local cities. And with that, we've had clients / I know if we speak of other franchises, customers that's been with us 4 or 5 years, longevity. So therefore, it gives them a sense of confidence because they know that they're going to get great quality. But also on the flip side, it goes with the employees. We've had employees who've been with us 7, 8, 9 years. We have an average of them normally 1 to 3 years. And we always share with them when they first start that you can grow within whatever the goals you want to do. We're here to support you, but it works hand in glove. We have to have an open line of communications. We have to make sure that they don't feel inferior, that they have the quality. If they have the quality or the passion, we will help them so they can grow. And I think a lot of times what happens when you have these different ethnic groups, if you don't mind me saying, when they come into the work environment, they're going to have these fears and they may not feel that they're inadequate enough to do the position. But what we found out through assessment, through different testing modules, this position might not be the best for them. Let's put them in another one instead of just shooting them out the door. Because we have to realize as the landscape is changing, and even with COVID, and as the general population is getting older, we have to embrace with the time. And when we can do that, we can all grow and succeed.
Thanks, Charles. And just pivoting real quick to another question that we had discussed chatting about is, are there different challenges that different industries may, face? And I know from my perspective, I see that I do see differences when it comes to how companies, how much effort they have to put into attracting talent or, winning that talent to come over to the organization because they're very, new or high demand positions that are just getting, engineering or the high tech type jobs that are. So I know there are certain challenges that we have to work through with companies to, one, identify what that talent, who's available to potentially be to be recruited for that position. But one of the things that I see is that if you are a company that's embracing diversity and inclusion and running some analyses and being competitive with pay and other inclusive policies and practices, that you're going to retain that talent a little bit better over time potentially and not have to worry about losing and then trying to win them back. So I will say I do see differences when it comes to newer positions or high versus high demand positions versus jobs that are, that are more tenured in nature, and you need a very senior person versus an entry level person. But when it comes to looking at it from a data perspective, there are many source data through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or you can look at online equal employment opportunity data from 2018 and prior years to kind of gauge what your potential industry looks like and or what all companies look like. And so you can benchmark those tenure jobs through those year one filings. There's also different IPEDS data that looks at graduation rates in new disciplines. So looking at graduation rates by certain disciplines, by certain years. So if you want to look at newer or evolving types of jobs and understanding, what your pipeline could look like, there is data that's more recent around the graduation rates that you can look at and compare your data to. And this is all in the name of evaluating your organization to see how well you're attracting that talent. Are you attracting talent to your organization that's equivalent to what it could look like, and maximizing what that could look like from a diversity perspective? And then as far as, other differences, I would turn it over to you to kind of speak to other cohorts in your network, and just, sharing anything that might be different challenges either within your industry or others.
Well, and that's a great question. Two-part. In our industry, we do have challenges somewhat, especially when we have different ethnic backgrounds. When they come, whether it's become a potential franchisee or an employee. Now, I'm gonna put it first for wisdom. As a Black company, they may say, well, the trust issue, the quality issue, the loyalty. As an emerging franchisor, yes, we are emerging, but in senior in-home care, we've been doing it for 14 years. So we know the industry. So the first part of it will be that we have to build that trust and that relationship to let them know, hey, we are professional at what we do. Let's give this an opportunity so that we can work together on the franchisee and employee side. Now let's flip it and look at other industries. Some of the other franchises, whether it's in the retail or the service industries, well, they may run into some of the same scenarios, especially when it comes to the leadership or the managerial part. And I really believe that they will have some conversations and build it around the relationships, communication, and trust. Because when someone comes and they have the package that they can qualify to do, it may not be that specific position, but it could be something within the organization to really help them grow. Because when you look at the bottom line, and I'm gonna go back with the clients. So we have clients that is based on almost every ethnic background you can think of. The only biggest challenge we run into sometimes is the language. I speak French, but I just know come see, come saw. But I don't know Spanish. But what's exciting is that when you can have employees or franchisees that can quickly or be able to speak that language and diverse enough to be able to engage with that client or employee, that's going to make them feel a little bit more confident. That's going to let them feel a little bit more, hey, I would like to be a part of that organization. I would like to grow with that company. Then that's when it starts. Because in reality, like you said, you have generations that are graduating and they're out in the marketplace, whether it's going to be for ownership or just high-level positions. They still got to have a lot of communications, trust, and building those relationships in order to succeed and win. So with our franchisees, we've done the same thing. Asian franchise, See, they've done that. They've been able to diverse and be able to communicate well with the different backgrounds. And even with our, give you an example, we have a single African American young lady, and she's very young. She's less than the age of 30. Well, what will happen is sometimes they will look at her and say, well, you're still, kind of young. You may not have that experience, but actually she has experience in the health arena. So we'll leverage on the experiences and then take someone in the organization that can help pivot and help them, close that case or win, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think that leads into a discussion point I wanted to talk on really quick, which is, we're asked, how does a metric-driven approach sometimes help companies or franchisees? And one of the things that you just mentioned kind of alluded me to the fact that you might want to hear about basic qualifications or job postings. And so one of the things that we can do through analyses is to evaluate kind of the applicant process and identify potential barriers in the applicant process for who's selected into an organization. And we have found that sometimes that job descriptions or job listings could potentially be a barrier for certain protected groups or so certain race, ethnicities, or sex. And we have partnered with companies to overcome that barrier and to make it a more inclusive and sound and valid step in the process to allow for more diverse talent to come into the workplace. So I think your just example there, and although we're not perfectly aligned in our example, it does jive pretty well as to a metrics-driven approach for companies versus the example that you gave. So I think with that, Charles, do you have anything else that you would like to share as any other tips or tricks?
Well, the other part would be is, just starting out from the beginning, having that mindset to change. Realize we're all in it together. We're not at the point where we got to point fingers here and there. Let's just work together. Because what is the bottom goal? What's the bottom line? To win. Win for the customer/client, making sure that they have a sense of loyalty, having a sense of, man, this is a great company that I can embrace with to purchase their goods and services. And then goes back with that employee. When we look at longevity and retention of employees, and Keli, the most important part of it is recognition. Yes, the money speaks loudly, but that recognition speaks even louder, giving them that sense of value, knowing that they belong and being a part of it, because then you have somebody say, I want to be a business owner. I want to be a franchisee. Regardless of the franchise, you're going to have some that want to do that, and then they're going to be so grateful when they get to the point at the end to say, man, I did it. When everybody else counted me out, I did it. And that's what's so exciting when we can do that and continue to move forward. So 2021, we're going to break the gates open, because this thing with COVID has to change so we can get back to making it happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one thing I wanted to, let's all wish 2021 gets back to normal here. I know there's so many things that we could talk about with the impacts of COVID on the workplace, but sticking to our topic, I will, the one thing I wanted to share just for those franchisees, when you're thinking about diversity and inclusion in the workplace and where to start, I think the one thing that you want to be aware of is the different context of how D&I can come up in the workplace. One is a company can be or a business can be very proactive and embracing it through top leadership as well as through policies and procedures and monitoring through metrics and other, to monitor selection, hiring, retention, and promotion. But the flip side of it is the reactive side, right? Through complaints or, investigating internal company turmoil, going to litigation. And so companies, you want to be aware of all the benefits that we talked about and kind of be on the proactive side of this, where you want to be doing the right thing and allowing for an opportunity for employees to be speaking up. And so one piece of advice that I would share is having that internal complaint process in place so that you can monitor it proactively before it gets external and you end up in a situation that you don't want to be in. And I think that gets to your point of trust and helping the culture and making people feel comfortable. If they're not having that place to go to put in a complaint and monitor it internally would be a best practice. Any follow-up to that?
No, I totally agree because, and what's on me, Kelly, if I didn't know any better, I would figure you're part of wisdom because we just had some of these conversations just not too long ago. And part of it is protection of the employees, because when they do go in some of the homes, because one thing I didn't share, we considered ourselves just like first responders. We're 24/7. And the only difference is we're going into the homes, and we want to make sure that the employees are protected as well as the clients. And they have that sense of feeling and assurance that the company is backing them. And that's the most important piece, because you're right. Day to day, when they go in, they have their personal life that they're dealing with, then they're dealing with their job. And when we can give them that assurance, and then they can go in and make that, what we like to say, keep our client, keep our senior happy. Are they happy in their homes? And when we can do that, we know we've accomplished that day. And you're right, when they can vet, send in a complaint and say, hey, this is a little bit too much, or this is what's going on, then we can have those conversations, be able to help them pass that hurdle and go to the next.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And having a team internally investigating things and making improvements in conjunction with other proactive initiatives that you're doing as a company. So I have some final kind of best practice takeaways to share, and then I'll turn it over to Charles to share any final thoughts as well as we're wrapping up our session. So just some final things I wanted to share is, if you are going to engage in more of the diversity metrics side, or launch any new initiatives or practices or policies within your organization, I highly advise that you involve your legal counsel in those discussions and or in our like attorney-client privilege protections. Those protections are key in protecting your franchise and the company from releasing those results publicly. Also, we tend to see that best practice employers in the space of diversity and inclusion are doing proactive analytics on their workplace and setting goals to kind of work towards over time through behavioral changes in the workplace. And the only other thing is that we tend to find a lot of synergy between legal, HR compliance, and diversity, as well as compensation and talent acquisition when it comes to having a very robust diversity and inclusion practice within the organization. Having a lot of synergy between those departments or those leaders does help to help with alignment of goals and better results for the organization. And also, I mean, the only other thing I would want to leave you with is the idea that incorporating employee resource groups to help, one, not just, is to help you with your internal initiatives as well. I mean, those groups are good for camaraderie. They're usually led by a leader or endorsed by a leader within the organization, and can help you with other things like attracting talent to the organization. And so, again, I leave you with, there are many benefits to embracing D&I in the organization, from selecting the right talent the first time, lowering turnover, overall competitive advantage. And we covered all those already, but it's a really good thing to do. And I think a lot of companies are embracing it going into 2021 for very good measures. So Charles, do you have any final thoughts?
Sure. Number one, don't be afraid to embrace diversity and change. And I think a lot of times, we as people or Americans, or however we want to say it, we don't want to dabble into that space. It's nothing to be afraid of. I think if you keep that open line of communication and just take it one day at a time, because it works. To me, it's exciting because we all have to work together anyway. Why not do it together and just have fun in doing it?
Okay, and I think with that, I think, we just want to, thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to listen to us kind of go back and forth about some best practices and firsthand experiences on the D&I journey. And we hope that the content was useful for you and your D&I journey. And please reach out if you have any questions. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you so much, Kelly.
Thanks.
Enjoyed
It
it.
was great partnering with you.
Thank you.